Hello and welcome to the Sharp Edge podcast, where we provide valuable insight and advice on the marketing and other business type questions that painting contractors encounter as they work towards achieving their goals. Now here's our hosts, Martin Morgan and Becca Hackley. Welcome to the Sharp Edge podcast, a podcast that's all about being the ultimate marketing and business resource for painting contractors. Today, we are going to be talking about a subject that we get a lot of questions on, SEO, search engine optimization.
You got that right, Becca. It doesn't matter for painting contractors whether they have a big web presence currently or those who might just be getting started with a website or considering a website. We hear SEO questions from folks all across the full spectrum, and it's certainly understandable.
So that's why it is your lucky day to be listening to us at the Sharp Edge podcast, because we are going to be covering 5 of the most common SEO mistakes that are being made by painting contractors with their website.
And Becca, I had the great opportunity to speak to this topic at APC, American Painting Contractors Tech Fest in December. And really appreciate the privilege, having the privilege of being able to do that with the fine folks at APC. And it's important to note that SEO is not a big black mystical box anymore. So for the longest time, it was really looked at that way. And I think SEOs almost purposefully made it feel that way so that people couldn't penetrate the walls and break in and figure it out themselves, really. But it's not that so much anymore. And I think that's a really strong positive for business owners, and certainly in the case for us as we talk today, painting contractors. So as we go through these 5 common SEO mistakes, we'll jump right in with number 1, and that is setting it and forgetting it. And that is a frequent mistake. That's probably why it's number 1, where a painting contractor will go in with all good intentions, and maybe they set up or they have somebody set up for them a website, and time goes by and it turns out, it's been 3, 4, 5 years and it hasn't been touched in that period of time. And that is a big loss of opportunity. And there's 2 key things to think about for why that is the case. 1, frequent updates and recent updates are important to Google. So Google, that's a consideration in their ranking factors for organic search is, when was the last time there was an update to the website? Because if they don't see updates, if they don't see, if the spiders don't see that something is happening to them, that's a sign that business may no longer be in business. And then the other thing is, it's for potential customers. Potential customers like to see that you're an active business, that you are doing current jobs, that you're working on different things, and that you are going to be active, that they can call you and expect to get a return. There's a lot of people, homeowners out there, especially, who might go through and call 3, 4, 5 different painting contractors for work that they have. And maybe surprisingly, 3 or 4 of those won't even get back to them, or they'll keep calling until they get somebody, and they get through 10 to 12 different painting contractors, and they might hear from 2 or 3. So showing them that that you are currently in business and actively working can be a good advantage for you over some of those other painting contractor websites that they might find.
Being relevant is huge, especially within a painting business. The homeowners, whether they're homeowners or business owners looking for a professional painting contractor, they pay attention to what's going on in the world. The world's constantly changing, so people are changing how they want their houses painted, for example. And if you're not using your website and your tools, to emphasize what you do in your jobs with photos and updated services, and they're looking on their phones, on their iPads, desktop, laptops, everything. They're going to search for you. And if you aren't relevant, if you aren't updating your things, they will go find somebody who is more up to date. So being consistent and updating your website, staying relevant, just like Martin said, like showing Google, showing those spider bots that you are constantly updating. That is so important because it needs to keep up with your website so your website can keep up with your potential customers.
And you did a nice job there, Becca, of laying out a couple of things that painting contractors can do to keep their website updated. And just a couple more quickly, potentially update anytime you change your hours, service area. A really good thing to do is just add photos, or ask whoever's doing your website to add photos. That's a good way to keep adding additional content and keep your website fresh and show potential customers that you are in business. As we move to number two, so the number two most common SEO mistake is not having enough content. And content is king. Oftentimes when it comes to websites, it can be easily overlooked, but it is really important. And part of that is because it is most often thought to be Google's number one factor as far as how they show websites in the organic search results. So they're looking for expertise and they're looking for high quality. The expertise is often shown and has historically been shown just in the amount to some extent. So part of that is because if you think about it this way, now some of you might be really young and you might laugh at this comparison, and I'm not offended, so that's okay. But if you think about it this way, think about a dictionary compared with a set of encyclopedias, right? So the dictionary has some information for you, but if you want to seek deeper information, you might be looking at the set of encyclopedias for a research project. If you were doing research projects back in the day when you were in school. But if you think about it that way, we might make easy assumptions based on how much information is there, right? We're going to assume, oh, that the encyclopedia set so much bigger. We're going to get a lot more useful information out of that than we're going to get in the dictionary. So Google would do the same thing. They want to see rich information on interior home painting or perhaps deck staining, and they're looking at the resources and they see a website here that has one page versus a website here that has 15 pages, and they're going to say, wow, that website that has 15 pages, chances are good. They probably are going to give more good information on this subject than that website has one page. So when you think about content, you can think about it from that standpoint, and that's a good frame of reference that shows you, the more high quality content that you have on your website, the likelier you're going to do well in search.
And Martin, whenever I've talked to, anyone really about content for their website, I've always explained it to them as like, the content isn't for you as the painting contractor. And sometimes it's not even necessarily for your potential customers. Of course, it's great to have that. Show the expertise and the services. So don't get me wrong there. But really, ultimately, content is there for the search engine to recognize that you know what you're doing. You've got proof that you know what you're doing by supporting that in the amount of just helpful and relevant content that relates to your painting business.
That is exactly right. And that's a great way to frame it.
Yeah. And if you're not really sure where to start, because I totally understand if you have a blank slate of a website and you're like, oh my goodness, I do services from deck refinishing to wallpaper to, well, hey, you're the painter, right? Hopefully you know the services better than I do. But where you want to start is you want to create a page of content for each service that you provided. Of course, we like to see a goal starting at 10 pages, but you will absolutely be better served with 15 to 20, if not more, pages of content.
Exactly right. And that leads us right to number three, which is somewhat focused on content as well. And the number three mistake is not highlighting areas served enough. Because let's face it, right? As a painting contractor, you are looking to do business in the area that you serve. You want people who are searching for the services you provide within that area to find you high on the search engine results page, on those organic search results specifically. And so in order to help that happen, you've got to let Google know that where you do business, and that's those areas that you serve. And one of the ways that you do that is by making sure that you've got those areas served on your website. And they can be in multiple different places, and by that I mean the cities, the towns, whatever you might tell people. If you were to talk to somebody and say, yes, I'm a painting contractor, and they say, oh, well, that's great. What areas do you serve? What would you say? Or maybe even more importantly, what would people be searching for in your area? When the inhabitants of the area that you serve, when the people, the homeowners, or commercial, if you do commercial work, what do they consider and what are they looking for? What types of things might they search for? And you want to make sure that you've got those, most often it's cities and towns, included on your website. And you've got to think of it this way too. All you care about is local search, right? So every search that matters to you is a local search. And you want to make sure that you are optimized for local search. You don't care if somebody is in, let's say, if you are in the state of California and somebody is searching for a painting contractor in Florida, you don't want to come up with those searches. That's not really going to be helpful. You want to make sure that you're coming up in your area. And one of the keys to making sure that happens is to be sure to highlight your areas served. And I will tell you, and I'm sorry to say this, Becca, but it's true. I have seen a lot of painting contractor websites where I had a really hard time on the homepage of even figuring out which area that they served or what towns and cities they served.
And that's frustrating because as a customer, that's exactly what you're looking for. I mean, like you said, you don't want to be in California calling a professional painter in Florida. But Martin,
Absolutely.
like since painters, like they're always on the go, they are moving. Maybe they do have like a huge broad area that they cover, which is fair. Kudos to them. But what do they do then in terms of highlighting those services?
That is totally understandable, and that's a good question as well, Becca. If you happen to be a painting contractor who has a brick and mortar location, then obviously you should include your address and on your website. But there are many painting contractors who don't specifically have a brick and mortar location, and that is no problem. And don't let that hold you back from highlighting your areas served, the towns and cities. So a really good way to do that is create a separate page for each city and or town that you serve. Or even if you wanted to even drill down more specifically, if you are in a larger type of a city, there might be specific neighborhoods, or you might want to target specific neighborhoods because you see the advantage of doing business in those areas. Then go ahead and do that as well, and try to put as much information on those pages as you can. Try to build them out a little bit, and if you can include specific details about the city or the area, then that's also going to be beneficial because that is just going to solidify even more that you serve that specific area. Again, both to Google, which is most of what we're talking about here and is important, but also to potential customers.
That reflects back on the content or the importance of content too. Creating that page of content for each city or town you serve, that's going to help create those pages. Your goal of 10, but your ultimate goal of 15 to 20, that's just going to help you. So keep that in mind when you're thinking of all the cities and towns you serve. Now we're going to be hitting on number 4 of our biggest SEO mistakes, which is giving up too quickly. So more often than not, we are totally in a world of instant gratification. Like if I don't see it now, I'm not happy. But SEO is absolutely a long-term play, right, Martin?
That's right, Becca. It is a long play, and so you want to keep that in mind. And what that often means, that what we usually tell people as far as a horizon to expect any sort of results is 3 to 6 months. And that might be a little aggressive, but within 3 months, we would say you should start to see your website appear on the organic search results. And within 6 months, you should start to see some pretty good movement as far as its improvement within those organic search results. And of course, a lot of that depends on certain things. If you've never had a website before, then that's probably about right, or about what you might expect. Certainly depends on the competition in your area as well. So you want to consider that. If you have a website, if you currently have one, and maybe you've done something different, or you're switching providers, or something related to that, then you might even see a temporary decline as you switch, depending on what you're doing. And as long as it's temporary, then that's not a big deal. But from the standpoint of, wait until about 3 months or so after that before you really take a look at it and think, okay, this might be a trend. But even more, oftentimes we would say, give it a year of full investment for time and money to be successful, because you don't want to just, light money on fire and just burn it because it's a waste. But if you're not giving it enough time, and again, what we would encourage that to be a year really, then you may not even know if it will be successful. I think a comparison people can often relate to, or we get asked about, is SEO really versus pay-per-click advertising, or Google ads, the ads that are at the top of the search results, because they can be seen. And the way to consider it is often, so Google ads or something like that advertising, they can give you an immediate lift, because if you're willing to pay enough money, you can make sure that you're number one in those listings tomorrow. Now, again, a lot of that depends on paying enough money, and that'll stay as long as you keep paying. But the challenge with PPC is that there's no long-term benefit. You're not building equity. You're not building something. Whereas SEO is more, as we talked about, a longer play where you're really building along the way, especially if you haven't set it and forget it, you're continuously working, or you're working with somebody who's working on it for you. You're going to build along the way, and then that's where you're really going to start to see the benefit of that investment.
So if you're in this for the long haul, for your painting business to succeed and do well over time, another thing to pay attention to as you're growing your SEO and where you're ranking organically, keep an eye on where your customers are coming from. So if people are filling out form fills directly from your website, or when they make a call into you, or how they're messaging you, possibly on your Facebook or other social media platforms, really pay attention to how they're finding you and ask them those things. I mean, make it a conversation, because that will play a big key role too in where to put your focus on in your digital advertising. Like, and I don't mean advertising as in pay-per-click at all. I just mean where you're putting your effort and your focus on how to draw more from that besides SEO.
It's a great point, Becca, because you want to be able to track those things. And we've worked with some great customers who I've heard on the phone, who will always ask, hey, where did you hear from us, or where did you come across us? And people will mistakenly just believe that, if somebody found me on the website, they're going to fill out my web form. But that doesn't really happen as much as you might think. Oftentimes, they find you via your website, and then they just call you, especially if it's on mobile, because it's likely that they'll just do the quick click the call and want to have a pretty instant conversation. Like you said, Becca, people want instant gratification. So if they're thinking about it right now, they want to have a conversation right now. So that's often the way that those things happen. And so you want to be sure to ask and find out, because you don't want to write off your website as a good investment, 6, 9, 12 months in, only to find out, people were coming in from the website. I just didn't ask to see if that was the thing that brought them to me. So make sure that you're asking those questions. And that leads us to number 5, which number 5, as far as 5 common SEO mistakes, last but definitely not least, is not optimizing your GMB profile or your Google My Business profile. And that is really important. And part of that is because, as we had mentioned earlier, all of these searches that you want to capture are local searches. And when it comes to your Google My Business profile, that's going to really help you from a local search standpoint. So that is important, not just for most people understand that that's really important for that local pack or the map in order for you to appear there. You want to make sure that Google My Business profile is optimized, but it also affects your organic search results.
So some people, if they have a website, Martin, they often ask me, like, do I need a Google My Business profile too, or vice versa? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. They need to do really well with a website and their Google My Business profile, because those two things work together as the 1-2 punch on the web. And the question, as you frame that, Becca, is right. And that's what we hear. Some people might say, hey, well, I'm on Google. I've got my Google My Business profile, but that's just not enough. Or they might say, yeah, I'm on there. I've got a website, but that's not enough. You really need both of them, because what happens is they're a great tag team, and they each help the other climb the ranks and do better in those specific areas.
Your Google My Business profile is ultimately another landing point for a potential customer to find you and call you, which of course your GMB profile links to your website, which is another great source of just connection on the internet. And I love the whole 1-2 punch. Like, that's a great way to put it. It's not one or it's not the other. You need to do it both, and you need to hit them head on, both of them. So as a key point that I will hammer and hammer and hammer away is always remember to stay active on your Google My Business profile and your website. Those updates that you're making to service hours, or if you do have a location set in stone, I mean, make sure that those things are consistent and updated, because those two are, like you said, they go hand in hand. So they need to be consistent with one another.
Yes, and fill out all the fields on that Google My Business profile and include as much information as you can. Make sure you've got the right category selected. There's a lot of stuff there. Use it to the best of your ability, and really complete that as much as possible. And as Becca said, be sure to be active there as well. Again, an easy way to do that is to keep loading those images in, keep using those images. It's something that's a really good tool for painting contractors, and just shows your work, and is going to be really helpful in lots of different ways.
Just to tack on this real quick, if we have any listeners who have questions about their GMB, their Google My Business profile, we absolutely have resources on our resource center at propainterwebsites.com. Blogs, probably a podcast I'm sure we've done, but we would be more than happy to share more information on it, because I understand that can be a lot to take on too.
Great point. Definitely great point. We do have those resources. We hope that you've taken something from the podcast today that's going to be helpful to you and in your business. And as Becca said, we encourage you to visit our resource center on our website. There's lots of different resources and information there. If you found this valuable, if you don't already subscribe to the podcast, we encourage you, please subscribe to the podcast. If you have other ideas for future podcasts, let us know. We're always looking for ideas, and our goal really is to provide as much value as to the painting contractor community as we can. So let us know, and if you have any questions, let us know as well. So thanks for listening. Please subscribe, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Sharp Edge podcast. If you want more information about this, please visit propainterwebsites.com and head to our resource center. We plan on hosting a podcast each month, so subscribe. You won't want to miss out. Also, we just have one last favor to ask of you. It would mean a lot to us if you would share this with your friends or other painting contractors. Our goal is to help you succeed, so you can help us achieve this goal by telling someone else about the show. Thanks again, and have a great day.